Hello, welcome to my first ever doll video filmed from my cubicle, where I will probably be filming these things for the next 10 years. Somebody asks me where I see myself in the next 10 years, I say here, probably. My name is Mary Lee, and I'm a freelance digital artist, and for a while now I've kind of been dabbling in doll customizing and creation kind of in the background as a side hobby, watching a lot of doll YouTubers, especially Etalon and Seasonal Frostbite. Delightful, everyone. I don't want to leave anyone out. Too many to name. I think sometimes I just search that on YouTube and just like watch it endlessly. But my skills have been improving, and so I decided to finally just go for it, and I think I'm finally good enough to showcase my personal methods for creating and modifying little plastic people. On a serious note, I wanted to say before I start, because I'm customizing Harry Potter dolls, they don't end up that way. I'm turning them into Adventure Time dolls. You've probably seen the title. But I just wanted to clarify nonetheless that I do not agree with J.K. Rowling's views on trans people. I'm just a nerd who had these dolls in my stock box for a while, and I decided it was finally time to fuck them up. So let's fuck them up. Alright, here we are. Oh, they're the dolls. Just waiting. The beginning of any project, of course, cleaning up my incredibly messy studio and getting ready for the next thing. Yeah, super proud of her. She was my previous project. Really big project in terms of her skin tone and also her hair. Lots of glue and determination in this one. I always make a mess out of my studio, and I just kind of let it sit there until the next project. Probably not a good thing, but I do clean right before the next one, so I guess that's something. Now that I've finally cleared the disaster area, it's time to start the design portion. I don't normally do a full design phase for a lot of my dolls. I normally like to just kind of sit down and feel it out, but since I was going with such a specific set of characters that are drawn in really abstract shapes and colors, I wanted to make sure I could translate them to more natural proportions and still have them read. For instance, I think Ice King, the comedy that he brings to the show is this kind of like bleak look at adulthood, and to reflect that, I thought I'd kind of give him the work from home treatment where he's got his kingly robe on, but instead of having armor or some kind of fancy medieval suit under it, he's just got his boxers and no shirt, because he only dressed for the Zoom meeting. I also think he'd get a big kick out of being shirtless. For Finn and Fiona, I kind of have the same approach to both of them, because for those of you who don't know, they're the same character, just gender bent, but they represent the antithesis of the Ice King, obviously because they're the heroes and he's the villain, but they have a much more optimistic, fun, still kind of childlike view of everything, and so I decided to go with a more fantasy approach to them, and they are adventurers, so I gave each of them armor. I gave them really similar armor too. I kept some design cues from their actual character designs because they are a little bit more humanoid than some of the other characters I'm going to be drawing. So they were a bit easier because there was more to go off of. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with them just because I really like drawing and making armor. Yes, I did decide to give Finn long flowing blonde hair. It is canon, even though it doesn't poke out of his hat in the actual show, like I'm drawing it here. But I love me some hair, so it's staying in. You can fight me if you want. I also purposefully made them draw their swords from the opposite sides of their body and have their hair part in like slightly different ways. I just thought that was cute. And now comes time to talk about Jake. What I had to go on for Jake was basically a orange blob that was vaguely dog-like, and acts older than Finn by several years. So, what I decided to do is give him this grungy skater boy aesthetic, just lean super into some 90s fashion to kind of date him a little bit. That's also why I gave him that little fishing vest. I think it makes him look a little bit more middle-aged. And also for the body of the doll, I'm going to be aging his face. Basically, my goal here was to accurately portray the fun older friend that's also a bad influence energy that Jake kind of brings to the table. Next, I designed Lady Rainicorn. I was stumped at first because, if you don't know, in the cartoon she's an actual unicorn. Which at first I was like, how am I gonna do that? But I realized that it was just kind of staring at me in the face. She's got this kind of ethereal feminine energy. She's usually the voice of reason. She can kind of float down and just make everything okay, and so it just popped into my head, just make her a princess. Do like every 6-year-old's dream and just make an actual unicorn princess. And yeah, I just ran with that, and now we're here. Now that I had successfully designed each character, it was time to move on to choosing the first victim. They all kind of presented their own challenges and differences, but at the end, you just know it had to be Dumbledore. We had to start with the Dumbles. So if you're new to doll customizing, or you've never seen the doll customizing video before, let me explain what's happening here. I like to sand down the plastic first. I just find that things stick better to it that way. I learned to do this from Dollumentary. It's just, it's not quick or easy, but it is a good way to make sure that if you're gonna give a doll a new skin tone, that it sticks right in there. But I don't know, man, there was something about the plastic of Dumbledore that just did not want to work with me in the end, and I didn't get him sanded good enough because it just wouldn't happen. I don't know what I did wrong. Okay, now this is one of my favorite parts about doll customizing. Oh my god, look at that. It's like it was never there. Who is this? Who was this? You don't know. It's about to be whoever I want it to be. I love it. Nurse, supply me with the clay. It's time to give this man a rhinoplasty. So the Ice King has a very long nose. In the cartoon, again, I didn't quite want to go all the way there, but I at least wanted to keep it in the design so that he's recognizable and so that there's something, you know, unique about him, you know, aside from the fact that he's got blue skin and is a frozen man, but you know what I mean. Time to tackle the crown. You know, I wasn't sure if I was terrified or excited for this part when I jumped in. My first attempt was with epoxy sculpt, but as you can see, it didn't go very well. Yeah, but I ended up scrapping that crown. More on that later. But there was no time to mourn the death of the previous crown, because we had body blushing to do. I feel like body blushing is an understatement. We're giving your boy a whole new skin tone. I do not know why I did not put gesso on his nose, but yeah. If you're making him blue, why are you making his joints pink? Well, I'm making them super pink with the hopes that some of the pink will kind of blend through the colors that will go on top. And so even though I'm going to be making him super pale and super dead looking, I still want a little bit of life to kind of show through and maybe give off a bit of a purple hue just for some tonal variance. I'm doing the same thing here, just starting to lay down some super dark shadows for the undertone, just so that the blue will have a little bit more of an underlay dynamic as well as an overlay, just to make everything pop that much stronger. And now we begin the freezifying. Turn this normal old man into a frosty old man. You guys are so lucky you're getting an abridged version of this, but it took so many layers to get him completely covered. Like I said in the beginning, there was something different about the plastic of this doll compared to other ones I've worked with, because it didn't want to sand, and then it took way more layers of MSC than I'm used to get it to actually take color, so and even then, it seems to just kind of like sit on the top, and I actually had to varnish a lot of this doll at the end, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. When you're doing a complicated skin tone change like this, it's a lot of like layering, spraying, drying, waiting. I think his body took me a week in total. It was super tedious, but I think the end result looks dope. Oh no, now we're on the joints. Oh god, okay, so this is even worse. You didn't see it because I edited it down severely, but his joints in particular just did not want to sand down. I tried as hard as I could, but just looking at myself even attempting to do that is like yeah, you can even see here me glazing the joints out of frustration. When joints are correctly sanded, it shouldn't take a billion layers to color them. They should take the pastels super easily. But now we're on to the fun stuff, laying down some of the blue, finally. This was my favorite part of the whole thing, probably. It was just super cool to see him transform from a normal man into a blue man, and I think it's very slight, but you can see my blushing carrying through on the undertone. It just came together so well. I always feel like this part of doll videos is super fun and relaxing and satisfying to watch, so I think I'll just leave you with this and the music for a little bit. Don't destroy the house while I'm gone. There's pizza money on the table. I'm back. Did you have fun? You probably clocked that I gave him abs. You know, I thought it was super hilarious that they just gave Dumbledore a normal Ken body, so it's like an old man face on this like ripped, virile young man's body, but I feel like that's just even more perfect for Ice King. I feel like if he commissioned a doll of himself from me, he would be like, you gotta make me ripped, you gotta make me buff, okay? I want rippling, sparkling abs. And here I am shading the face just a little bit more than the body because you're gonna see it more, and I want it to be dramatic and a little bit more realistic than his cartoon counterpart. Yeah, immediately, right away, you can kind of tell something was up with his face mold. I don't know why, but one of his eyes was way more bulbous than the other. And I had a really hard time trying to follow the the molded lid, the teeny tiny molded lid that's in there. I don't know if you can see it. But following that gave me two drastically different eyes. So from here on out, you can just see me going back and forth trying to reconcile the eyes to each other. Eventually I came to a spot where they looked pretty symmetrical and pretty good. But oh man, getting there. The struggle you're about to witness is real. If you're new to this, you might be asking, hey lady, why'd you stab pins in his head? They're there to keep the towel in place. I decided to keep his original hair, so I'm just trying to protect it from all the MSC I was spraying. That's all. I do think it looks pretty cool in a kind of horror way though, so enjoy his strange little crown. Yeah, I think you can really see the wonk of the eyes when I start to fill in the whites there. With eyebrows, a lot of people say that they should be twins and not sisters, and I completely disagree. I think that dolls look so much better when there is like a teeny bit of asymmetry. Not as much as his eyes were doing, but when there is that like little bit, I don't know, I just really like making different eyebrows. Yeah, these first moments on a doll or in a drawing where you really start to define the pupils and irises it can be kind of a clutch moment, because this is where you lay down the foundation for making sure that they're not cross-eyed or wall-eyed or bug-eyed, and they don't look like crazy. I mean, unless that's what you're going for. I mean, the Ice King is pretty crazy, but I think I think I want his doll with more realistic proportions to be more pensive and sad than like scary. As you can see, he looks just a little wall-eyed. I'm pretty sure I fixed that later, but yeah, and now we're back to struggling with the shape of the eye again. Okay, pull yourself together, Marilee. Wow, yeah. Oh my god, look at that struggle. And then I make it somewhat better. And that's just how the artistic process goes, just back and forth until it looks alright. Or even good sometimes. Who knows? Let's see. Yeah, I didn't like that eye shape. That's why I'm putting the white powder over it, or pan pastel, I guess, because I'm trying to kind of soften them down so that I can take the aspects I do like about them and kind of bring them out a little more, and then with the aspects I dislike, I can completely just like draw over them and use white and his skin color and everything until you can't even tell that the mistake was even there. Because we're working in a lot of layers with MSC. I've cut it out, but that's what's going on. Alright, back to the time lapse. Ah, I see. I think I did some work on his eyes off camera until I was like slightly happier with them. I do know that my phone, which I used to record this, started like not recording and blacking out a little bit. And so I didn't get absolutely everything, unfortunately, but I did get mostly everything, so surprise, his eyes are basically fixed now. Hooray! And as you can see, even now with like the last bits of super bright and super dark shading, as I kind of fritz with the eyes a little bit, I'm still kind of trying to shape them to look a little more normal. I think this looks pretty good though. I decided to shade the beard too. I just think it adds so much more interest and dimension to it. It had this great sculpt, so I just really wanted to make use of it. I considered making it look frozen, but looking at the scope of this whole project, I decided to just kind of shade it in accordance with like his skin tone and kind of like his imposed lighting. I do that a little bit sometimes on dolls. I like to do colored shadows even when their skin tone isn't a fantasy one. Just because I think it adds that little bit of zest, you know what I mean? And I think here, yep, you can see me experiment with painting on the eyelashes. Yeah, that didn't go as planned. I wiped that right off. Alright, looks good. On to the next phase. Now I'm glazing the eyes so that they'll have a nice little shine to them. Help him look a little more alive, even though I drew him depressed on purpose. You can tell me in the comments if you think it helped him. Something I can tell you about this project is that he kept chipping. I tried a bunch of different things, but ultimately I decided on trying to paint over them and hoping that that would kind of sink into the plastic better, even though his plastic wasn't taking any pigment very well at all. Even though I sanded him beforehand. If anybody knows what standard Kens are made out of, like if their plastic is different, let me know. So at this point, I'm desperate, and I'm just going all in. I'm using pan pastels. I am using acrylic. I'm just going in there with some varnish, because these hips will not stop appealing. And later, I would find that it wasn't just his hips that kept peeling either. So, that's fun. Stay tuned for that. Hi, so I made an executive decision and I cut a lot of this out. You're not missing anything, it's just varnishing and peeling and chipping and painting and peeling and varnishing. So I decided to skip all that and just go straight to the clothes. Hello, I'm calm again. It's calm merrily. Because now we're back in the land of sanity, where I know how to do things. And I decided that since Dumbledore already came with this like wizard's cloak, that I would just use the pattern from that to make the Ice King's big blue muumuu. And so I deconstructed the Dumbledore robe, which is what I'm doing right now. That's why I'm destroying it. In case you were wondering. But yeah, I'm destroying it so I can trace all the different pieces and have a pattern. Yes, I did eyeball this part. No, I don't recommend eyeballing this part. It's just, that this is kind of what I've always done with patterns. Sometimes a piece of fabric just feels too big to pin down, and I just, do it this way with measurements. Anyway, carry on. I consciously made the front panels a little bit skinnier than what the original doll had because I knew that I wanted it to be more of an open front bathrobe situation than a wizard's cloak that goes, you know, all the way around. Or I guess wizard's robe is what I mean. Don't mind this little part. Sleeves always basically just do my head in, so sometimes even if I'm following pre-made clothes, I just have to move them around a few times to just wrap my head around how they connect to the rest of the clothes. For the trimming, instead of the embroidered collar I originally wanted to do, I decided to go with some nice fluffy white fur because it just reminded me of the cold, I guess, and maybe a little bit of Santa, even though I wasn't necessarily going for that, but in the end I think it totally looks super cool, and yeah, really happy with my choice here. So at one point, I decided that since I had this great little sewing machine, I was going to be smart, and I wasn't going to kill myself hand sewing. I was going to try it. So I did a test strip, as we see me doing it here, and everything seemed fine. Already we see me dealing with the thread being caught here, and me not really knowing how to fix it, but I thought, you know, maybe that's, you know, the original fabric. Like, maybe it doesn't like Mattel fabric. I don't know. So, I decided to go ahead with the main robe anyway. So the first try was a wash. I got this tangled mess in the back for reasons unknown. And with the second try, it decided to not make stitches at all, but rather just do one line of fabric. So I decided, fuck that, and I went back to hand sewing, like going back to an abusive ex. So I just went ahead and did all that off camera, and now, I'm gonna show you the fun part, which is putting the fur on this thing. I don't have an iron, so please enjoy this homemade flattening method that has taken me years to develop. Please believe me. It totally wasn't something I came up with on the spot. Now I am brushing out the fur, not only to make it pretty and fluffy and to pull out all the parts that may have gotten stuck in the stitches, but so that when I go to trim it, as we see here, it'll all be relatively the same length, and so it can carry the shape that I want it to. You know, even if that shape is wild and disheveled on purpose. There were so many white hair clippings just floating around. I had to wear a mask so that I didn't breathe any of it in. And to this day, I will still find like little fuzzies and like remnants of the fur that didn't make the final cut. This is the fit test, and I'm happy to report that it went basically perfect. So then I could start cleaning it and get to work on bedazzling it. Yes, you heard me, bedazzling it. Okay, so I was bedazzling it to achieve goals. Goal number 1, because I think that the Ice King would really appreciate a bedazzled wizard's robe. Goal 2, to make it look even more frozen and even more like ice, and I think I did a pretty good job. One of the main problems I came across with the bedazzling is that a lot of the bedazzles would kind of fall off even though I put a bunch of fabric glue down, and I decided to kind of put a little bit of fabric glue over everything as well. I sacrificed a lot of shine for it, but I think that that's a better alternative than having a wizard's robe that shit keeps falling off of. In the end, I don't think that fix dulled everything that much. I do think that some of the glue edges looked a little sloppy, but we'll see in a minute. That's why I went over it and kind of scraped all that off. And now you might be like, hey lady, you just talked about sacrificing shine. Why are you putting a bunch of white pan pastel over it? Well, that's a great question. My vision for this and the way ice and snow kind of works is the ice kind of glitters through the snow, and so I was trying to get that same look and feel and have it look a little bit more natural as opposed to just purely magical. I wanted it to look as though his magic is slowly, over the years, kind of going out of control and even freezing parts of his robe. And now I'm taping the fur down so that it won't get sticky or harmed when I spray MSC on this. I sprayed MSC on this because I wasn't sure exactly what else to do in this situation. I didn't think it would help anything to just put more glue over it, so yeah, that's what I did. And it seems to have worked. I run my finger over it and not that much comes off it, so that's pretty good. If you know a better way, let me know. I would like to know. And now we are making the boxers, starting with a pattern. I used the doll for reference because I have actually never made Ken clothes before, ever. And then I resorted to looking up a real pattern, going with the kind of vague shape and size that I remembered him being. There's a lot of guesswork with me when it comes into making doll clothes and patterns for them, so I wouldn't necessarily say to copy me here. I'm sure there's a lot I do wrong, but it all ends up kind of working out for me in the end, and I can't guarantee that that will happen with you. I'm not really a sewist, I think they're called. I just kind of do what I can, and I'm definitely not qualified to teach you guys how to make doll clothes. I can only show you what I did. The one thing I enjoyed about working on Ken clothes over Monster High girl clothes is that it's a bit bigger, so making seam allowances and hemming and stuff is a little bit more forgiving, and that was really nice. I don't think I had to use Fabri-Tac there, but I just get really paranoid about my doll clothes coming apart, so I almost always use Fray Check and Fabri-Tac. I'm getting the now finished robe out of the way by just kind of draping it over his head. This is a very sophisticated and complex doll making method. Boop. And now you are witnessing me forgetting which way is the front on boxers I made myself. I decided to go with pink and gold hearts because pink or red hearts is kind of the universal embarrassing underwear from cartoons, and I thought that was very fitting, and I chose gold as well to kind of, I mean, he's a king, right? He's an insane king that rules basically no one, but he's still a king, so I decided to put gold hearts on it. It is at this point that either the camera stopped recording or I forgot to record. So I'm so sorry, but there's gonna be a jump. I really love doing face-ups for dolls, but I think aside from his face, this was the other part of the project that I think I had the most fun on. It was just so much fun to paint each little heart and see the shorts get sillier and sillier. While I was detailing these shorts, I kind of learned, shocker, fabric paint isn't exactly amazing for your brushes, but I didn't have anything to really clean it on hand. And the isopropyl alcohol is really strong, so I was kind of afraid to use it, but I'm wondering if I should have. If any of you know what I should have done to clean my brushes as opposed to just kind of pulling on them, please let me know. And if you're cringing at the sight of me scraping my nails across the bristles, don't worry. I didn't like doing it, and I'm so sorry that you have to see it. If you're wondering why I'm not continuing the hearts from the waistband to the rest of the legs, or drawing like snippets of hearts along the bottom, that's because I want to give the illusion that the pattern continues, that this is a patterned fabric, and not just something that I kind of painted hearts on. And once the hearts were done, it was time to kind of try to figure out the drawstring. My initial theory was that I could use a piece of embroidery thread as the drawstring, thread it through with a needle, and things would just kind of work out, right? Like a lot of other times in my doll making process, you will now witness many makeshift ways to try to do something very simple, that should be very simple. And now for the moment of truth. As you can see, it doesn't look quite right. It's bunching a little bit more than I wanted because of all the room that the embroidery thread has in the waistband. I decided this was a no-go. And so for now, I decided to move on to the crown part 2. I decided to use Worbla instead of Epoxy Sculpt. Which is kind of annoying for me to use because I have to run the hairdryer, and I like to talk to people while I work, but can't really talk to people while I work because who wants to be on voice chat with like a in the background all the time? So it cuts into the time that I have with my friends, which sucks. Yeah, I decided that the X-Acto knife just wasn't cutting it, pun intended, at one point, so I just moved on to using normal scissors. That worked out a little bit better for me, although I wasn't able to get as sharp as an angle on the crown that I really wanted. So as you can see, I just kind of cleaned it up after the fact. And at this point, you might be like, hey lady, why are you suffocating the Ice King? That's because this was my first sizing and shaping idea, was to kind of protect his head and then melt the crown around it. And then once I had the basic shape, I didn't want the Warbler fusing with the saran wrap, so I took it off his head and I got this paper tube that was like the same circumference as his head, and just heated it up and molded it that way. And I'm just kind of bad at Warbler. It's either too hot and it breaks, or it's too cold and I snap it, so it was still a bit of a struggle, but I got there in the end. And then originally I decided to put some glue on it to help the parts of it that were a bit weaker because of my bad Warbler skills, but then I realized when I smoothed it out that it would be bumpy, and I decided to lean into that to kind of texture it. And I think, you know, it might seem like a wild idea right now, but the end result was pretty cool. So for the crown, like his joints and like a lot of other painting I do on doll scale stuff, I decided to go with a glaze method, which essentially is like the next best thing if you don't have an airbrush. And I have an airbrush, but it sucks. And so basically what glazing is you heavily dilute some acrylic paint, and then you slowly go layer by layer putting down the color, and it comes out with this very kind of smooth, brush strokeless look. In this case, I used it because I wanted the texture from the glue and the Warbler to kind of show through and not be not have any brush stroke texture kind of taking away from the texture I already laid down. Then there's also the fact that I wanted this to look like it was made from one solid piece of gold that had been gnarled by magic and warped over time. Not to spoil anything for a super old show, but I think at one point it's revealed that it's actually the crown that's evil and not him, so I thought this was appropriate. Once I had the solid gold crown, it was nice, but I wanted to add just a little more texture to it after all. But I decided not to do this with just more gold, but to actually create some rust and, I guess, damage, battle damage colors, and kind of using a dry brush technique, dust that on to kind of accentuate all the rivets from the glue and the warping from the drip technique. You know, watching this back, I'm really surprised that I didn't get any paint on my arm. Next, it was time for his classic red jewels. I couldn't find the exact shapes and kinds of jewels that the Ice King has on his crown in the show, but considering everything else in this design is going way off, I decided that was fine. And also, I don't have any kind of, like, ability to make things out of resin or anything like that yet, so I was kind of stuck with what I had. I have naturally pretty shaky hands, so getting very small, very fragile stuff to behave is kind of a struggle sometimes. Amazing that I became a doll maker, huh? Despite that, I always keep trying and I always keep going, and luckily a lot of art materials and supplies are pretty forgiving and pretty flexible. Like with glue you can move things around before it dries a little bit, so it's all good. Oh, and here are those shoelaces I told you about. I guess I decided to randomly switch projects. Okay. Yeah, no, that's kind of the norm for me. Usually, in the earlier parts of this video, I cut it so that things are a little more cohesive, but I decided, you know what? Let's show you a little bit of what my real process is like, which is just switching things when I get bored. The sirens would chill for a second. Okay. Oh my god. Okay. I think I also just decided that my hands were way too shaky to do the gems at this point, and so I decided to work on the drawstring instead. So the method to my madness here is to dry it, to tie it into a very generous bow before I cut and hem it, just to make sure that there's enough material there to pull it tight. And now, having accomplished that, I feel a little braver, and it's back to the crown. Here we go. Unless it's back and forth again. I know what I was doing. I was waiting for the glue to dry on the gems, and while I was waiting for the glue to dry, I was sewing this. Right, okay, got it. I'm on the same page with past me now. And now while all that dries, it's time for the dreaded fit test part 2 to see if the shoelaces look any better than the embroidery thread drawstring. Yeah, they still bunch a little much for me, but I think it's a marked improvement over just having a thread in there. And that's the crown. I think it looks so pretty, and I think it fits my version of the Ice King really, really well. I'm really happy with it. I'm so proud of it. With all of that done, it's time for the final assembly and photo shoot. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to see which doll I completely transform next.